Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. It is now time for Bedtime Stories with Dr. Moss. Well, before I do it, happy New Year, everyone. This is our very first Bedtime Stories for 2021. I hope you all had a phenomenal and restful Christmas break, a great Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. I hope you all had all of those amazing things. Hopefully, you all were safe. And again, as you all continue to travel throughout Memphis, throughout the world, make sure that you all are continuing to mask up. I wouldn't want anything to happen to any of you. So please continue to be safe as the numbers are still rising. We want to make sure we practice safety first. All right, now on to bedtime stories. So again, welcome back to bedtime stories. Last bedtime stories, we had our awesome guest, author, my friend Principal Brown from Riverwood. Well, today it's back to bedtime stories with Dr. Moss. So it's just me. So hopefully I don't lose any viewers because Principal Brown's not joining us. But don't worry, 2021, we're going to try some new things with bedtime stories. We're going to try to bring in some staff members and we're going to do some co-reading together, just like we did with Principal Brown. So stay tuned for more opportunities for us to engage in bedtime stories, but not just with me, but with some of my friends as well. I'm so very excited for our story this evening. Sorry, I'm getting my lighting right for you guys. Oh, there you go. Gotta have good lighting. Gotta have a setup, everyone. Always have a setup. All right. Want to be sure that we read this story. I'm so very excited about this story. It's called Carter Reads the Newspaper. I'm excited about this story for many reasons. Number one, because the author's name is Carter, and that's my nephew's name. So I'm excited about that. But also because he's reading the newspaper. And I wonder how many of you all actually read the newspaper? Not just what you see on the screens, not what you see on social media, but actually pick up a newspaper and learn something from it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little inference. I see him reading the newspaper. We know people who read the newspaper, they're reading so they can learn something. So I'm wondering what he's trying to learn about or what he's reading about and what he's determining and figuring out because of his ability to want to read. So we're going to read our story, Carter Reads the Newspaper, to see what it's all about. And again, it was written by Deborah Hopkinson and illustrated by Don Tate. And as we go through every single day, every week, we know the illustrator draws all those awesome pictures while the author writes the amazing words we will be reading. Y'all ready? Are you ready? Let's buckle down, buckle up, and get ready for tonight's bedtime story. Carter Reads the Newspaper. I see lots of famous people and names, so maybe he's reading about famous people. Let's see. Each February, we celebrate Black History Month. It's a time to honor heroes like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. But there's one hero we sometimes forget. Carter G. Woodson didn't help people escape from slavery, start a bus strike, or lead a movement of millions. Yet, without him, we might not have Black History Month. This is his story. So already on the first few pages, we were just introduced to our main character, who was Carter. And what we realized here is Carter, this little boy who's reading the newspaper, actually is Carter G. Woodson. And so now we're about to hear his story. So get excited. Carter was born on a small farm in Virginia in 1875, 10 years after the end of the Civil War. Carter's parents, James Henry and Ann Eliza, were born into slavery, and Carter grew up hearing about their lives. The stories they told weren't part of any history book, but Carter kept them in his heart. James Henry had run away from his master to join the Union Army and fight for freedom. Times were hard, though. After the war, James Henry worked on the railroad, saving enough to buy a few acres of worn out land. Most years, the crops brought in $100 or less. Ann Eliza was unbelievably brave. When she was a girl, her master decided to sell her mother. Ann Eliza asked him to sell her instead. That way, her mother wouldn't have to leave her other five children. But no one offered enough money for Ann Eliza, so her master sold her mother and two little brothers instead. Ann Eliza didn't see them again until after the Civil War. She never forgot the horror of standing on the auction block. So, what we're hearing is about slavery and what it was like to live during those times as an African American. Carter's parents struggled to feed and clothe seven children. Especially in winter and early spring, food was scarce. Carter, the youngest, once said, "We will leave the table hungry to go to the woods and pluck the persimmons." Many times he had to jump into bed early on Saturday night so his mother could wash his only pants and shirt for church the next day. Carter could only attend school 4 months each year. The rest of the time, he was needed to work on the farm. Learning didn't happen just at school. James Henry taught his children to stand up for themselves and to take pride in who they were. He gave Carter the courage to look anyone in the eye and declare, "I am your equal." And though Carter's father couldn't read or write, he believed in being an informed citizen. So he asked Carter to read the newspaper to him. But newspapers weren't easy to come by. Sometimes Carter read from old ones that had been used to wrap up food or packages. Reading the newspaper gave Carter his first glimpse of the wider world. Carter longed to go to high school, but his family needed him to earn money. When he was 15, out he hired himself out to nearby farms, working long hours under the hot sun. He also drove a garbage wagon. High school would have to wait. So we see right now we all have the opportunity to go to school like we want to, but he had to work to support his family. Carter's older brother Robert found good paying work in the coal mines of West Virginia. Carter decided to join him there. Mining was grueling work for a boy not yet 17. Ooh, I like that word, grueling. Do you all think you know what grueling is? So you all should know that when you're all in class, your teachers tell you to use some context clues. So I'm going to look at that sentence again. Mining was grueling work for a boy not yet 17. It was dangerous. Once a piece of slate came crashing down on Carter's head. So from what I can infer, I see they're talking about him still being a boy, not being a man. I see them talking about it being dangerous. And I also see them talking about that one time a piece of slate almost crashed on him. So when I see the word grueling, I think it was like hard, very difficult work for someone of his age. Carter never forgot his time in the mines. Years later, Carter said, "I am a coal miner and I can take anything." In this harsh place, Carter met a man named Oliver Jones. You'd have to look hard to find Oliver's name in the history book. But in that small mining camp in Fayette County, West Virginia, Oliver did something important. He changed one life, and that life changed many. Oliver Jones. Like Carter's father, Oliver was a Civil War veteran who believed in education. As a soldier who had been at the Battle of Appomattox on the final day of the Civil War, Oliver had fought for freedom and equality. He was still willing to do his part to further the cause, said Carter. So we just met another character, Oliver Jones, who apparently had a strong impact on the life of Carter. Each evening after working in the mines, Oliver threw open the doors of his little house to the other miners. He would open his doors. He made his home a reading room, filling it with books by African American writers and with newspapers from all over the country. He sold ice cream and fruits, all at the price the men could afford. At first, Carter just went for the food, but that changed. Carter said, when Oliver Jones learned that I could read, he soon engaged me in and to inform him and his friends as to what was in the daily newspapers. Carter was happy to oblige. He liked reading the newspaper. Besides, he said later, I always enjoyed nice things to eat. Carter admired Oliver. He was a well-educated man, but he could neither read nor write, said Carter. He learned through others. Carter began to learn in the same way. Carter had longed for school. Life at Oliver's tea room turned out to be school of a different kind. Whenever Oliver and the other miners had questions about something Carter read in the newspaper, it was Carter's job to research the answers. If a Civil War veteran was in the news, Oliver wanted to know all about the man. I had to look him up in the books, inform my friends as to what battles he had fought, said Carter. If there was a question about economics, politics, or a new law, it was up to Carter to find out all about it in the newspaper and explain it to his friends. So Carter had a very important role. Carter was inspired by Oliver and this circle of men committed to freedom, equality, and knowledge. Men whose own life stories would never be in history books. And so the seeds of Carter's own life work began to grow. My interest in penetrating the past of my people was deepened. Carter worked in the mines for 3 years. When he was 20, he moved home to Virginia to start high school. He finished in just 2 years. Carter went on to college and to become a teacher. He continued to study and work, earning a master's degree when he was 33. Then, when Carter was 37, he earned a PhD in history from Harvard University, the second African American to do so. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first. Carter was the first and only Black American whose parents had been slaves to receive a doctorate degree, a doctorate in history. That is awesome. So you see, Carter G. Woodson, I am just like Carter G. Woodson, and I too got a doctorate as well. Some things that I have in common with Carter G. Woodson. At Harvard, so the story goes, one of Carter's professors said that Black people had no history. Carter remembered his father's pride, his mother's courage, and Oliver's determination to learn. He remembered reading the newspaper. Carter spoke up. No people lack the history, he said. The professor challenged Carter to prove him wrong. For the rest of his life, Carter did just that. You can tell by the look on Carter's face that he was not happy that the professor said that Black people don't have history. In 1926, he established Negro History Week. Later, it became Black History Month. Carter chose the second week of February to mark the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Today, our entire nation celebrates Black History Month, and we honor Dr. Carter G. Woodson as the father of Black history. But in 1926, Carter was alone with his new idea. He had to blaze a trail. He had to spread the word at a time when there were no computers or internet or televisions. So Carter sent pamphlets about Negro History Week out to schools, colleges, churches, and women's clubs. And of course, he sent notices to newspapers. The boy who began by reading the newspaper to others transformed the way people thought about history. He fought for a history based on truth, a history that includes all people. Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history, he changed it, and we can too. The end. And so what we saw is that this little boy who just enjoyed reading the newspaper, who just wanted to read, was able to create something that went down in history. And so I asked you, the back of the book says, Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history, he changed it. He learned about the world by reading newspapers and grew up to become the father of Black history. So I ask each and every one of you scholars, what will your legacy be? What will you create? Never think that you're too young to accomplish something or to be something big and great and have a huge impact on the world, just like Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And so I hope you all enjoyed this story. This story was very informational. We learned a lot of information, a lot of facts about Carter G. Woodson. We now know, does anyone remember when Negro Week first started? Negro History Week first started? Do we remember? It was 1926. 1926 was when Negro History Week started. And what month do we celebrate Negro History Week? February. So it was a second week in February when we celebrated Negro History Week. And initially, when it was only a week, it was a second week in February because that signified the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, who played significant roles for African Americans during this time. So I hope you all learned a lot, got lots of different facts about Carter G. Woodson, and I hope you all enjoyed our story. Can't wait to see you all again next week. Again, remember, to all our parents, this is just an announcement. Please check our Facebook page or Instagram. I placed information about a Canvas course that all K through 5 students need to take in Canvas. So again, please be sure to do that. We need your support in getting that done. I believe that's everything I have. So I hope you all enjoyed this story. Everyone have a great evening and go Bulldogs.